Welcome to Simply Explained English. I am Lisa.
And I'm Eric. Do you want to improve your English easily? If so, you're in the right place.
So, listeners, we made some small changes to our podcast.
First, you will hear a conversation between Tom and Sarah about don't waste your time, you're not young forever.
Then, after the conversation, we will explain some English words from the conversation.
We hope you'll like and find these small changes useful.
Okay, let's listen to Tom and Sarah.
Hey everyone, welcome to Life Talks. I'm Tom.
And I'm Sarah.
Today we're talking about something important. Don't waste your time. You're not young forever.
Exactly, Tom. Sometimes we get so caught up in everyday routines that we forget that time is always moving. Take into consideration how fast time passes and use it wisely. Years have passed before we know it, and we wonder where the time went.
It's true. When we're young, it feels like we have endless time. But in reality, we only have a short amount of time to do what matters before our responsibilities increase.
Right. It's all about balance, enjoying the present while also planning for the future. We shouldn't stress too much about wasting time, but we should ask ourselves, am I spending my time on what really matters?
Exactly, Sarah. I remember a quote. Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow might never come. If we keep putting things off, we may run out of time to do them.
That's true, Tom. It helps to figure out what's most important to us, whether it's career, family, travel, or learning a new skill. After we know that, it's easier to say no to things that don't help us reach our goals.
Great point, Sarah. A lot of us, especially when we're young, feel we have to say yes to everything because we don't want to miss out. But saying no can actually give us time for the things we really care about. And everyone's timeline is different. If somebody has done something great at the age of 25, when you are 35, if you have not done it, it does not mean that you are behind. We all have our own paths.
Exactly. Maybe we should not wait for the perfect time to start. There's rarely a perfect time for anything. Sometimes you just have to start now, even if you're not fully ready.
Right. Even small, consistent steps make a big difference. They can help us reduce the stress. If you want to learn a language, start a business, or read more, just start small. Little actions every day add up over time.
Additionally, the supportive people around you really help. Supportive people around you can keep you motivated. And if you don't have that support right now, find a community online or join a group. You're not alone.
So, Sarah, before we finish, what advice would you give to someone feeling like they're wasting their time?
I'd say, don't be too hard on yourself. Think about what matters to you and start taking small steps towards it. It's never too late to start, but the sooner you do, the more time you have to enjoy the results.
Exactly. And remember, even small moments can lead to big changes. Whether it's 5 minutes or 5 years, make it count.
Thanks for listening to us today.
Remember, live with purpose because you're not young forever.
See you next time on Life Talks.
It was an interesting conversation. What do you think about the conversation, Lisa?
I loved how they emphasized starting now, even if things aren't perfect.
It's so easy to put things off and wait for the right moment. But they're right. It's better to take small steps.
Absolutely. I think we can all learn something from their conversation. Time really is precious.
I agree, Lisa.
So, Eric, what are the words today?
The first word today is endless. Then we will continue with rarely and to reduce. Then put something off. And the final one is take something into consideration.
Let's start with the first word, Eric.
The first word we have today is endless.
Endless.
Now, let's see how Tom and Sarah used this word in one of their podcasts, and then we'll explain it in more detail.
When we're young, it feels like we have endless time.
Endless is an adjective, and it means something that seems like it has no end or something that goes on for a very long time. When we describe something as endless, we mean it feels like it will never stop.
It's like when you have a lot of work to do and it just keeps coming. You could say, the work feels endless. It means there's so much to do and it will never end.
Here's another example. We walked through endless fields of flowers. It means that the fields were so big that they seemed to go on forever.
Another example could be, she had endless patience with her students. This means she was always patient, no matter what happened, and it felt like her patience had no limit.
One more thing. Endless is a neutral word. You can use it in both formal and informal settings, and it's quite common in daily conversations.
So, listeners, remember, when you use endless, you're talking about something that feels like it has no end, whether it's a good thing or a bit tiring. Okay, well, I think we've explained the word endless pretty well. Now, let's move on to our next word.
The next word we have today is rarely.
Rarely.
Now, let's see how Tom and Sarah used this word in their podcasts.
There's rarely a perfect time for anything.
Rarely is an adverb, and it means something that happens not often or almost never. When we use rarely, we are talking about something that doesn't happen very much. We are talking about something that doesn't happen very much.
It's like, when you don't see someone very often, you could say, I rarely see my old friends anymore. This means you almost never see them, maybe only once, in a long while.
Exactly. Here's another example. She rarely eats junk food. This means that she almost never eats unhealthy food, only on very few occasions.
Another example could be that he rarely goes to the movies. This means he doesn't go to the movies often, maybe just once in a while.
Rarely is often used when we want to say that something happens, but not very often. It's the opposite of something like frequently, which means it happens a lot.
Eric, do you think rarely is a formal, informal word?
Rarely is a neutral word, Lisa. You can use it in both formal and informal settings, and it's quite common in everyday conversations when talking about habits or things that don't happen often.
So, listeners, remember, when you use rarely, you're talking about something that doesn't happen often. It's a useful word for describing habits or events that are uncommon. Now, let's move on to our next word.
The next word is to reduce.
To reduce.
Now, let's see how Tom and Sarah used this word in their podcasts, and then we'll explain it in more detail.
They can help us reduce the stress.
To reduce is a verb, and it means to make something smaller or less in amount, size, or importance. When we reduce something, we are making it smaller or making it less in some way.
For example, if you want to be healthier, you might reduce the amount of sugar you eat. This means you eat less sugar than before.
Exactly. Let me give another example. The company needs to reduce its expenses to save money. It means the company needs to spend less money. Can you give us another example, Lisa?
Sure, Eric. The plane reduced speed as it approached the airport. This means the plane started to fly more slowly to land.
Good example, Lisa. A quick grammar tip. Reduce is followed by the thing that is becoming smaller or less. For example, reduce waste, reduce stress, or reduce spending. It's a very useful word when talking about changes or improvements.
So, Eric, would you say reduce is a formal or informal word?
I'd say it's used in formal situations. In casual speech, people might use cut down instead.
And how common would you say this word is?
It's very common, especially in business, health, and environmental contexts.
And it's particularly useful in professional settings, isn't it?
Absolutely. Whether you're discussing business costs, environmental impact, or personal habits, reduce is a key word. So, listeners, remember, when you use reduce, you're talking about making something less or smaller.
Well, I think we've covered reduce pretty well. Shall we move on to our next word?
Yes, let's do that. The next word is put off.
Put off.
First, let's see how Tom and Sarah used this word in the podcasts.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow might never come. If we keep putting things off, we may run out of time to do them.
So, put off is a phrasal verb, and it means to delay something. When you put something off, you decide not to do it right away. You decide to do it at a later time.
And honestly, we all do it sometimes. Like when you know you should clean the house, but you are saying, I'll do it tomorrow instead. You're putting it off because maybe you just don't feel like doing it right now.
Totally, Lisa. Here's another example. I put off going to the dentist because I was too busy. It means I delayed going to the dentist. I decided to do it later because of my schedule.
Another one could be that she put off her homework until the last night. It means she waited until the very last minute to get it done.
Put something off is something we often do when we don't feel like doing a task or if it seems too difficult or boring at the moment. It's easy to put things off, but it can cause more stress later on.
Absolutely. Having a habit of putting off everything is not a good thing.
I agree, Lisa. By the way, a quick grammar tip. Put off is always followed by the thing you delay. For example, put off a meeting, put off my homework. But if you use a word, you should use ing form, like put off doing the laundry or put off making a decision.
And just to recap, put something off is an informal phrase. You'll hear it a lot in everyday conversations, especially when people are talking about avoiding tasks they don't want to do.
Good summary, Lisa.
Okay, well, we've reached the last word of today. What is the last word, Eric?
The last word is take something into consideration.
Take something into consideration.
Let's hear how it is used in the podcast between Tom and Sarah.
Take into consideration how fast time passes and use it wisely.
So, take something into consideration means to think about something carefully before making a decision. When you take something into consideration, you're making sure you've thought about all the details or factors. That might be important.
Exactly, Eric. Like, if you're planning a trip, you might take the weather into consideration before deciding when to go. It means you think about how the weather will affect your plans. Can you give us another example?
Sure, here's another example. The company took employee feedback into consideration before changing the policy. This means they listened to what the employees said before making a decision.
Exactly. Let me give you a simpler example. When choosing a new apartment, you should take the location into consideration. That means you should think about the location carefully before deciding on the apartment. So, Eric, would you say this word is a formal or informal phrase?
It's more formal. In casual conversation, people might just say think about or consider.
And how common would you say this phrase is?
It's very common in professional and academic contexts, especially in meetings, emails, and formal discussions. So, listeners, next time you need to make a decision, remember to take everything into consideration. It can help you make the best choice possible.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Simply Explained English. We hope you found the words helpful and the explanations easy to understand.
Thanks for listening. Keep studying your English.
And stay tuned. Bye for now.